Okay, I think we are now live on the air. So hello everyone out there on Twitter tonight and on YouTube. Welcome to Pitch Wars Live. I am Lee Marr and I'm filling in for Nikki Roberti as your host tonight. I'm a YA mentor. I'm represented by Alana Roth Parker at Laura Dale Literary Agency. And I'm going to be looking for speculative fiction, contemporary mysteries, thrillers, light horror, retellings, and historical with a twist to it. So that is me. I'm very excited to be here tonight, excited to see what questions come in for all of these great mentors we've got with us tonight. And I'm now going to turn it over so that this group can introduce themselves to you and let you know what genres they are hoping to find in their inboxes later this week, because yes, it is this week. So MK, I'll turn it over to you.
Cool, thanks, Lee. I'm MK England. I'm represented by Barbara Powell over at the Irene Goodman Literary Agency. My debut YA space opera is called The Disasters, and that's coming out from HarperCollins Children's in fall 2018, or a literal eternity from now. I'm co-mentoring with Jamie Pacton again this year, which is a wonderful thing for anybody who submits to us because she is amazing. And this year we are looking for sci-fi, fantasy, we'll do historical fantasy or alternate histories. We'll also do contemporaries, and we are particularly interested in LGBTQ stuff. We're just not really looking for anything really dark or slow or literary. And that's us.
All right, Lindsay Ely, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Lindsay Ely. I am a first-year mentor and super excited to be doing this. I'm represented by Laura Zatz of Red Sofa Literary, and my debut novel, Gunslinger Girl, is coming out in January 2018 from Jamie Patterson Little Brown. I am looking for pretty much all the fantasy, all the science fiction, most of the science fiction, spec fic, and would love some historical fiction, alternate fiction, and I will take the dark stuff that Megan doesn't want.
Okay, my name is Kristen Ciccarelli, and I wrote The Last Namsara, which comes out October from Harper Teen in US and Canada and Golans in UK. And I'm co-mentoring with Joanna Hathaway, or Jo. I think she's watching, so I'm just going to say hi, Jo. And we are looking for predominantly fantasy, but we're also open to historical. Jo's sort of the historical nerd. And any kind of fantasy and any kind of historical. High stakes, fast-paced, smart, and romantic. But I'm really open to everything within the fantasy domain. And then Jo, it has everything in historical. So yeah, that's us.
Hi, I'm Sheena Bokweg. I write feminist YA with weird concepts and probably too many kissing scenes. And I am represented by Jessica Sinsheimer. And I am a Teen Pit mentee. So I am mentoring one of the Teen Pit winners, Angela Wang, on her YA Own Voices time travel story. That's right, she's a time traveler. That was a joke. Sorry. It's actually really quite wonderful. She was the valedictorian in her high school, and she just graduated. So while she was busy getting better grades and on every test than anyone else, she also had time to fit in writing a 90,000 word story. She's amazing, and it's been a real privilege to work with her.
Hi, I'm Joan, and I'm the mentor for Team Pusheen, which is doing YA this year like we did last year. My co-mentor is Mara Rutherford, and she was a 2014 Pitch Wars mentee and then mentor since then, and I was a 2015 mentee and mentored last year and had a great time doing that, so I'm back. I'm represented by John Kuzik of Folio Literary Management, and this year, like last year, we're looking for All the young adult speculative, so anything sci-fi, anything fantasy. Personally, I'm a fan of twists, so if you catch me off guard, then I'll probably love your manuscript.
Hello, my name is Kirby Addis. I'm co-mentoring with Monica Bustamante Wagner, aka the best person ever. I'm an intern at a major New York literary agency, and I'm currently in a master's program to be a librarian. I was actually a Pitch Wars mentee twice, and this is my second year mentoring, and I've also mentored in Teen Pit. Monica and I are looking for pretty much any fantasy you can throw at us, as long as Monica's stipulation is that she wants a little bit of romance. It doesn't have to be the main plot, but there has to be a little bit of romance in there. And this year we're also taking contemporary. It can either be really, really dark or really, really funny. Our only thing about contemporary is we don't like quiet contemporary. It has to be extreme and like in your face, like, I don't know, pecs on a dude or something. So that's us.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Miller. I write dark young adult fantasy, and I'm co-mentoring with my previous mentee, Maria Mora, this year, which is really exciting. Maria writes science fiction and contemporary fantasy. I have a book coming out, Mask of Shadows, at the end of August. Maria is currently represented by Erica Bauman, and we are basically looking for the whole, I guess, your whole umbrella of science fiction and fantasy, especially dark. Alternative history is included in there, science fantasy, space opera. We're especially interested in inclusive, realistic works and new spins on old concepts. And I think that's it. That's all the exciting stuff about us.
Hi, I'm Kit. I really hope the connection works because it's 5 just silent. Is that okay, guys? You guys hearing me? I am a former mentee from last year, so I've been where all of you guys hopefuls are. And I'm one half of Team Clause, so I'm co-mentoring with Tomi Adeyemi this year. I'm represented by Josh Adams of Adams under Kester Grant. My debut is a YA fantasy, A Court of Miracles, which is the Jungle Book meets in alternatives. It was out in fall 2018 from Random House, and this year we want all the YA fantasy except for contemporary and portal fantasies, and I'm so happy to see all of my nemesis here tonight. Joan, MK, Kristen, I'm looking at you.
Hi, I'm Michaela. I also go by Mick or Mickey, so anything works. I'm represented by Heather Flaherty at the Ben Agency, just like Kristen, in 2015, so I'm really excited to be mentoring this year. I'm looking for YA fantasy, contemporary, historical, or historical fantasy. I'm super big on voice and all the girls doing all the things.
All right, thank you, YA mentors. So I think all of you Twitter watchers and Pitch Wars hopefuls out there, I think you know the drill by now. You can ask any of these mentors questions using the hashtag AskMentor on Twitter. And our Twitter captain for the night is Melissa West, who's going to be feeding me questions to ask everyone here live. So since we usually get a ton of questions, I'm going to go ahead and dive in with the first one so we can fill as many in the next hour as we can. So question number 1 comes from Sabrina N. McLean, and she or he asks, what in a manuscript will make you squeal with glee? If it showed up in your inbox, what would make you squeal with glee?
Are we just jumping in?
Yeah, I think we can just jump in.
All right, I like just unique stuff that you don't see. I'm thinking about like the first line in A Darker Shade of Magic about Kel's funky coat. Really any of those like really just unusual, eye-catching just strange details that I haven't seen anywhere else. Like that kind of stuff just always just draws me in. And you know, anything else can be happening, and I just kind of want to know what was going on with that coat for like 3 whole books. So that's me.
Yeah, I'll definitely second that with a little story from mentoring last year. Rebecca Schaefer is mentoring this year. So hi, Rebecca, if you're out there. I remember her manuscript landing in Jamie and I's inbox last year and just being totally floored by how different it was. I had never seen anything like it before. The concept was just something completely new. And so even though we ended up not mentoring her, she ended up being mentored by another wonderful person. You know, that caught our eye, and I still think about it now. So definitely that element of uniqueness, that that hook, that easy sell, that high concept hook. And, you know, like Mick said, badass girls doing awesome things. That's always going to excite Jamie and I.
Does anyone else have any elements that would just blow your socks off if it ended up in your inbox? All right.
Probably for me, reversals of tropes, like, but in ways that when someone explains it, maybe the query letter, you're like, oh my God, I never thought of doing that before. And the promise of twists, like really good twists. My husband and I actually just finished watching all of Black Mirror, which I know is kind of more science fiction, but like if you can do Black Mirror in a fantasy with all the twists of every episode, I will kill someone for your manuscript. That and really dark themes are something that would make me make grabby hands at a manuscript. So.
That's excellent. And that is actually a perfect feed-in, mentioning the spin on different tropes, which I happen to love too, for our next question, which comes from Katrina O'Neill, who asks, what are everyone's favorite and least favorite tropes? And I feel like this would be a good one to have everyone answer, since I'm sure each of you has favorites and least favorites. So I will kick it to MK and take it away.
Yeah, bring it. God, if I see an alpha male in my inbox, I will die. I just, I can't. I really can't with the alpha male characters. On the other hand, even though it's definitely fallen out of fashion, I just have a thing for, you know, the old Alana books. Like, give me a girl who has to dress up as a boy to be a knight. Like, I don't know. It never gets old for me. It's a classic trope.
Yeah, I too will take anything that even vaguely resembles the old Alana books or any of the Tamara Pierce books, which I think do some things that we like to see a lot in YA still today, especially with their resurgence in the past books like Define, things like that. I hate the only one trope, and I don't particularly mean they're the chosen one trope so much as the only girl in a field of boys must rise above and also kiss all of them. The only other girl in this book is catty and love romance competition. I don't like that. It's not something wrong with a book so much as something that I personally haven't experienced and am tired of reading about, because I'd much rather prefer to have a book full of ladies at this point in my life, I think.
I also am going to say I do not like the catty love interests, like girls versus girls, just no, hard pass. I'm going to go against MK. I actually do not like the girls dressing up as boys anymore. Like, it's not a bad trope. It just personally has kind of stopped appealing to me as I guess I've gotten older. I just want the girls to kind of be able to stand on their own girliness, I guess. But I absolutely love the morally gray sort of vigilante type main characters, your Kazbreckers, your Hollands, your Starbuck from BSG. Like, give me those characters who just are really morally twisty.
I super love Hate to Love, Rip Zutara. I don't think I really have a trope that I dislike, just because I think that anything can be done really well in the hands of a really good writer. So I try not to have like tropes I dislike, but Hate to Love is definitely one of my favorites.
I'm going to compete with Lindsay here because I want all your morally gray genius characters like Kaz. And also, if you guys watch anime, I'm a huge fan of Light from Death Note-esque characters and Lelouch from Code Geass. So definitely, it doesn't even have to be a boy, just any character who really is able to think on his or her feet and act using his or her mind. As for tropes I don't like, definitely journeys. You have to work really hard to get me on board for a journey book, or if the journey takes up a chunk of the plot, it has to be something different for me. And also just one person rising up against some huge structure and having to dismantle it on their own. I find that personally a bit unrealistic. So for me, it really depends on the execution of any trope, but yeah.
I think I talked about this last year, that this is kind of a collection of tropes, but my least favorite trope is the white dude goes on an adventure to save the land, and also he probably has sex with a lady that he meets like the day before and that kind of thing. Just that in general, just kind of the fantasy trope of the, and it doesn't matter if he's the chosen one, it doesn't matter any of that stuff. I'm tired of seeing white dude that's like in English medieval environment goes on a journey and no one cares. Probably, I thought about this for a while you guys were talking, but probably my most favorite trope is, and it can go either way, either enemies to friends or enemies to friends to lovers. I really like enemies that turn out to like not be all that bad, and not like a, you know, Hitler wasn't that horrible. I mean like someone that genuinely is like there's a misunderstanding or something and they're not really a bad person, or people that start out as rivals and become lovers. That's probably one of my favorite tropes.
Okay, I'm going to jump in. Everything that Mick and Joan said, I also want your enemies to lovers, or hate to love. And I'm not a fan of quest. I don't know if it's really a trope, but I'm also not a fan of the long journey. But I didn't get to hop in on the last one, and I don't know if this fits, but I will take anything gender bent. So if you have anything gender bent, like gender bent Prince of Egypt, like anything, I would jump on that.
Hey, so I think Kristen is cheating because someone has told her that there is actually gender bent Prince of Egypt in this competition. That's just cheating, okay?
I didn't know that.
I hate. Yes, it exists. I was also like, send it to me. That's totally okay. I accept all of these things. It's gonna be awesome. I cannot stand Mary Sue's, like, you know, the girl who is so perfect and everyone just falls in love with her when she sees her, and she is destined to save the galaxy, and she's also a secret princess, but she just didn't know. Like, that just drives me crazy. I hate saying things I hate, though, because then there's always ways that in stories that I've read that have done those things where it works. So please don't take this as gospel. If you have a princess, still submit your MS to us. I cannot stand insta-love. And I can't stand this little like thing where couples take time to kiss and declare eternal love, like in a moment of massive battle and war. And just like, there is no time for making out right now. I love a lot of the things that all of my nemesis have said. Like, I love dark, morally ambiguous characters. Like, I love prickly heroines like Katniss and Lada and Starbuck. I hate to love and enemies to friends, and twisty court intrigues where like everyone's inside and there's no sense of this is good and this is evil, but where it's all morally ambiguous and people have different loyalties that sometimes even go against what they want to do. Like Game of Thrones or Nirvana in Fire. And if you don't know what Nirvana in Fire is, you need to change your life and go and watch it immediately. And as for what we want diverse fantasy that's from all around the world. I think Kabi said it earlier, we don't like the medieval European white English people fantasy Lord of the Rings, no more. We want delicious anti-heroines and villain stories no random Mean Girls, and would love some fresh retellings.
Sorry, I'm having issues with my mic. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay. My least favorite trope is the evil blonde cheerleader. I don't like when people are evil because they're pretty. And I also don't like when people are evil because they're not pretty. I really love heroes who are, I love a fat heroine. Dang it. Dumpling is my favorite. And I love books like that. I love when we give other people turns to be the hero. I think that's really important.
All right, thank you, everyone. So next up, we have a question from at AloraFlora13, and they ask, whoops, I just lost the question. They ask, what are 1 or 2 things you look for in the opening chapter to draw you in and request more? Anyone want to start with that? What in the opening chapter will get you to request more?
I guess I'll start again. So Jamie and I really love to see in the first chapter some kind of setting detail that just makes us go, wow, this is a really interesting world. Even if you're in a contemporary setting, if you can give us one of those like really small specific details that just puts us so firmly in place, we love that kind of thing. That and some like really solid, like realistic sounding dialogue will definitely make us slam the request button.
I want a really great first line. If you can hook me with a really great first line, because I think first lines are actually really hard to do, I'm going to instantly trust you and keep going.
I want to second Kristen. Again, I think, yeah, first lines, if you have one that subverts expectations and yet somehow tells us something about your main character and the tone of the story, I really want that. And I also want that to hold up for the rest of the chapter. I'll definitely be considering the chapter as a whole. So even if you don't nail the first line, because that's something we're going to work on, I really just want to see that your first chapter does the job it needs to do. So if you're promising a really fast-paced story, I want to see that inciting incident at the end. If you're promising something that's a bit more literary, that perhaps has a more slow simmer to the plot and the character development, I want to be able to feel that in your writing, if that makes sense.
Probably the 2 things I look for, because Monica and I are looking at both contemporary and fantasy, is world building and or voice. Because to me, in a contemporary, you're not going to rely as heavily on the world building as you would in a fantasy, of course, because most things, we know what they are. You don't really need to necessarily explain them. You don't have to explain like a bus system, but it's not necessarily easier to write contemporary because the energy and the words that you would have spent on world building, you instead need to use building up your characters more and relying a lot more heavily on voice. So it's almost like the world building turns into character building in a contemporary. So those 2 things to me would make both fantasy and contemporary, is voice and world building.
I would kind of agree. World building and voice are really important to me. In the sense of world building, I don't want to be confused when I start your story. I don't want to be spending time trying to figure out like where we are, what's going on. I want to kind of understand where we are and understand your character right away, so that kind of goes along with voice, because I need to know that this is a person I want to spend an entire book with, like a character I want to root for, a character I want to see succeed, or even maybe an anti-hero that I'm not sure if I want them to see, but if I don't know I want them to succeed, but I'm intrigued by them and I want to stay with them for like an entire book. So world building definitely, and voice.
I'd like to get sort of get enough flavor of the story right in the first chapter. One of the hardest things to read is when you feel like you're getting hit over the head with lots of details. Like, someone, like when you get too many details in the first chapter, it's almost like the author is saying to you, this needs a lot of explanation. And that just kind of loses me, because the minute I have to start thinking about all the explanation of the story, I start to kind of like lose it. So I guess really looking for melding the flavor of your story into what's happening and not having to like rely too heavy on exposition right in the beginning of the story.
Excellent. Anyone else for that question? I think we went through the list. So next up, we have a question from Bethany Hensel 13, and it says, if you love the voice and you love the concept, but the story does need work, is there a revision you deem just too big to take on? What are kind of your deal breakers, even if you love the story? What's too much?
Can I jump in first for this one? Okay, so I feel like it's that always idea of there has to be at least some basis for craft with Pitch Wars, because we can't teach you how to write, not even necessarily a book and an entire plot arc within the time allotted, but there has to be some basis for craft before we go in for revisions. So even if we're having you do an entire structural overhaul of the plot within that month and it may be cutting it close, there's rewriting the entire thing from the ground up on a sentence level would probably be too difficult, not for you throughout your lifetime, because you can always improve maybe just within the 3 months, which would be too long for Pitch Wars, but within the time that we have for Pitch Wars specifically is usually too much, I think.
For me, it depends on the writer, which probably before Monica and I would decide to take someone on as a mentee, there would be a lot of back and forth of discussing with them what we expect of them and what's expected out of this contest. I have worked with writers, and this is not necessarily within Pitch Wars, this is also just people that I've helped with their books. I've worked with people where they really only needed to fix a few small things and they took a year to do it. I've worked with people where I told them to cut several characters and rewrite half the book, and they did it in 2 months because they were so dedicated to their craft and dedicated to fixing the story and doing it correctly. So to me, it depends on the writer, because some people can do it and some people can't. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, ditto. That's nailed it. If the writer is willing to do the work, I just feel like there's not a whole lot that would be a total deal breaker. Like for me personally, like maybe if the writing needed a lot of work, 2 months is a little bit of a short time to really work on that. But honestly, I'd say 90% of the time, if the author is willing to put in the work for a big revision, then I am also on board for that.
I would agree with what everyone's already said.
I'm sorry, go on. Okay, I'll go. Sorry, Kristen. I just want to throw out there that my co-mentor, Mara, is a fantastic line editor. So I know I always say that I really would like the craft to be at a certain level, like what Lindsay was saying. It's really hard to teach craft in such a short amount of time. But at the same time, I guess what I'm looking for is that your strength really shines. So if you're an excellent plotter, and I really get that sense from your story, and perhaps your line writing is a little bit weaker, we can work with that. But I just want someone who understands what their strengths are. So that goes for character too. Like if your strength is character and your characters really shine, we can focus more on your weakness.
Yeah, I'm going to echo what everyone said, that I would be willing to work to do a major revision if the writer was willing to do a major revision. What I'm not really interested in is doing, if you're line by line, if your prose is not quite there for the whole thing, I think that is not something we could fix in 2 months. So I'm really not interested in doing line edits. It's big structural edits don't intimidate me, but I wouldn't want to do a lot of work on the line by line level.
I wanted to pop in and add one more thing, which is though, because I'm co-mentoring with Monica, we are actually going to do both developmental and line edits. The first time around, developmental edits or just overall edits of like the plot, it's really Monica's strong suit, but I will help her. Like we'll talk about things and make sure we agree on them. And then once the mentee finishes developmental edits, then I will help them with line edits. So we're actually doing both. So basically prepare for lots of editing if we take you on.
Excellent. So usually at halftime, Nikki does a little showcase of Pitch Wars swag that she has, but I did not plan ahead and bring my Pitch Wars swag to the computer with me. So instead, we're gonna mix it up tonight, and I'm gonna let Kristen do a little show and tell with some knives.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the halftime show. So my husband is a bit of a blacksmith, and he just got back from this 8-day intensive blacksmithing workshop. So I'm just going to show you a couple of the things that he made. So the first one is sort of like a traditional blacksmith knife that it's all one piece of iron that's just bent and hammered, and like you can kind of see it's sort of like rough and matte here, and then this is really sharp, so I'm not going to touch it, but that's the first one. The second one is a utility knife. I don't know if you can see it, and you can kind of see he left a little bit of the, like, so these are hand forged, so he left a bit of his hammer marks in there, and it has like a hand or a sheath, a leather sheath that it's fitted to that he made. And my favorite one is actually a Japanese style. It's called santoku, I believe. I might be saying that a bit wrong, but and it's the same thing. He left you can kind of see the hammer marks in there. But yeah, so that's his santoku. And they're very sharp.
Thank you, Kristen. That is amazing writer inspiration and also mentor intimidation, I think.
Yeah, I can help
None of us will be fighting. None of us will be fighting Kristen for any manuscripts.
No,
also, if we do and we end up dead,
I can take her.
She probably could. So the next question we have tonight, for our co-mentors on the show tonight, what is your process for choosing just one mentee together? And Kirby, why don't you take that one first?
Alrighty. As I've mentioned multiple times, I'm co-mentoring with Monica Bustamante Wagner, aka the best person ever. And we don't really have a process because generally we agree on most things, which is why we decided to co-mentor together. Generally, if I pull something out of the Pitch Wars inbox and I'll be like, oh my God, I really love this, she'll usually be like, oh my God, like we have to message them right now and ask for the full, and like, there'd be 50 messages of us going back and forth and fangirling over a manuscript. So we don't really have a process because we have extremely similar taste. I think last year it came down to 2 different manuscripts that we both really loved, but there wasn't really an argument over whether or not we should take them on. It was which one do we like more than the other. And even then, like, we both decided on the same one. So yeah.
Yeah, Jamie and I are pretty similar. We do have a little bit more of a structured process since we use a shared Gmail account to receive all of the submissions. Like, I'm a librarian, guys. I don't know. I really like to get fancy with labels and things like that. So we have like Megan, yes, Megan, no, Megan, maybe, and then same thing for Jamie. And so we each go through the inbox and we label all the things. And, like Kirby said, we pretty much always agree on just about everything. So it's pretty much always, yes, yes, maybe, maybe. And there's really not a whole lot of variation on that. We communicate constantly in our daily lives anyway, texting and, phone calls and everything. So there's definitely a lot of texting back and forth. Oh my God, did you read the submission we just got? It's amazing. So yeah, I think it was pretty much the same thing last year. It came down to a couple of manuscripts that we were really torn over, and we just had lots of long phone calls agonizing over which one we were going to pick. But in the end, we did end up landing on the same one. And there was really no struggle in that choice.
Like Megan, Mara and I for Team Pushing, we share the same Pitchforks inbox. I'm nowhere near as organized probably, but yeah, so last year, the process generally was I kind of went through the slush at first just because my tastes are a little bit broader, and I also really like sci-fi, which Mara reads a little bit less of because she loves fantasy. So I'll keep both of that in mind when I'm going through the slush because our tastes are pretty similar when it comes to fantasy, especially because we've read each other's work. We know what our favorite books are. So I'll select out all the sci-fis and the fantasies that are generally speaking just decent, like really good objectively. And when it comes down to the subjective choice, we go through and we read the fulls together, and then we'll get back together and discuss. And last year we didn't really have any argument over who we wanted to go with in the end because it both jumped out to us as a really good manuscript. So.
Marie and I haven't co-mentored together yet.
So Tomi, Adeyemi, and I are co-mentoring. Okay. Kristen, that you can just know, okay? I'm not scared of you. I'm Tomi Adeyemi, and we to answer the last question actually, same as everyone else said. If our mentee needed a lot of work and they were willing to do it, then like no problem, we wouldn't hesitate to pick them up. For our process of what we choose, generally speaking, Tomi and I read in a way where, like, if I've read a really amazing YA book, I'll message her, I'll be like, you have to put this on the top of your TBR list. And then she'll read it, and then she'll finish it. And then when we get together on chats or whatever, we're like, we break down the craft, what we loved, what we didn't love, what we felt, whether it was improvement on the last book. That's what we just basically what we're probably going to do. And I assume that I think we're both queries in the first chapters and both like individually and then seeing, but because our tastes are so similar, I don't think that there's going to be a big difference between it. And I read super fast. So probably I'm going to be the one going like, you know, you have to finish that one. It's so amazing. And yeah, basically.
So yeah, Marie and I haven't co-mentored together yet, so it'll be a trial of errors for us this year on how we manage our slush, but it should be fun. We also, I think most of us have shared inboxes, so I think the plan for Marie and I is to go through separately and then join our powers at the end once we've each chosen several manuscripts that we love, which I imagine will be the same manuscripts since we seem to love the same things. So, however, if we just crash and burn, I'm sure we'll talk about it on Twitter and you'll all witness it.
So my co-mentor, Joe, just informed me that the way that we are deciding on a submission is that we're getting drunk on my birthday and we're going through all of them. So that's our very strategic, no, just joking. So Joe and I actually have really, really similar taste. Like we love the same books and we don't love the same books. And we are asking for different, like I'm very fantasy based, and Joanna is very historical, but we are very open to both genres. Even though I'm not a huge historical reader, I'm very open to historical. So I'm yeah. We've never done this before, so I guess we're gonna figure it out. But
well, thank you, co-mentor teams. So the next question is actually kind of a compilation of a few questions we've been seeing tonight and over the past couple of days. And that is, what is the hardest revision you've ever done personally, mentors? And what from that revision, what lesson learned are you going to pass on to your mentee during Pitch Wars? So Michaela, we'll start with you.
All right, cool. So I think the biggest revision I worked on was actually my last manuscript. It was over 100K, and I was like, I need to cut this thing because it is way too long and it's probably super draggy in parts. So I was thinking about what to do, and I really, for a while, like, I told my agent as is, but then I felt like, no, I don't want to subject her to this like horribly long book, so I'm gonna figure out a way to cut it. And then I kind of had this idea, and I was like, I was scared of this idea. I was like, oh, I don't know how this will change things. It'll be a pretty big revision. But then nothing else was really coming to me, and I was like, I think this is the right way to go. But I was kind of scared of it. And then I eventually was like, nope, we got to do this. So I cut like a whole big portion of the book, and then I figured out how to relink things because, you know, I'd cut this whole portion out of it. And when I had finished, I was super, super proud of the way that hopefully that I fixed this book and I put everything back together in a decent way. So my advice is definitely go with your gut. Don't be afraid of the workload. Just go with what you think is the right way to do it.
To piggyback off what Mick said, I think, yeah, going with your gut is huge. And especially since it's a mentee-mentor relationship, I know sometimes you're like, oh, I have to like take all my mentor's advice, or I have to like do what they suggest. But so recently, like, to tangent a bit, but come back, I recently finished like this huge rewrite of a book, and it's like almost killed me, but I'm alive now, it's good. But the thing about the rewrite was that I had a lot of people tell me what wasn't working with it, but not so many solutions as to how to make it work. And honestly, I think that was for the best. So like, I have an agent, but ultimately at the end of the day, what I did with the rewrite was based on my own sort of like revision letter to myself. Because a lot of times I find people can pinpoint what's wrong with their book, but they have a harder time giving you the suggestion that is going to work best, because no one really knows the story as best as you do. So I guess the advice I would give is that no matter how big the revision or how big the issue is with your book, just listen to your heart. Definitely listen to the criticism, but don't be afraid to really do some of the hard thinking on your own. The mentor or even your agent in the future can't really do the hard thinking for you. You have to do that on your own.
So probably the hardest revision I ever did was with Monica. She was my Pitch Wars mentor, but this actually was not during Pitch Wars. It was outside of Pitch Wars. I approached her with this book and I said, listen, this book is really near and dear to my heart. You know, can you just tell me what's wrong with it? Because, you know, I've been getting rejections and they've been really vague. So she read it and she was like, all right, listen up, snack cake. Your story's good, but your voice sucks. And I was like, well, okay. And we sat down and we had a lot of conversations about what the characters actually wanted, what was the core of the book. And I don't even really know if I would call it a revision, if more so completely rewriting the book from scratch. And I sent her 20 chapters and she was like, wow, I've actually never seen someone pull off a voice revision. Well done. And then she was like, but guess what? It's not good enough. And I was like, gosh, heckin' dang it, Monica. But I love that about her, though, that she gives a lot of tough love, but it's only because she knows you can do it and she knows you can succeed, i.e. me, that I could succeed. But I think there's a lot of lessons I learned in working with her, but I think that the biggest one is don't be afraid to give someone something, even though you know the answer might be it's not ready, because you don't want to query it and just be like, well, I don't really know how to explain this. You don't want to query it and not send it to people because you're afraid of what your friends will say. You need to hear that from people that care about you before you get torn down by someone, you know, in a professional capacity, because it's going to hurt a lot more coming from someone like that than your friends and critique partners. So I guess there's loads of lessons I learned. Like I learned a lot about structuring and goals and things like that. And basically Monica is just the best. Like that's the message you should take from this. So.
Okay, hardest revision ever. All of them. Little background for you guys. The hardest revision I've ever did was the last one I did with my editor right before we finished the book. But I had done a revision for a contest before Pitch Wars, during Pitch Wars, and revised with the agent, then actually sold the book contingent on a revision and did that revision, and the editor didn't really like it. So we were coming up on doing ARCs, so I ended up sitting and doing an almost full revision to a 95,000 word novel in about 30 days. So, and that's with a full-time job. So my advice for doing revisions is you may think you can't do it, but you can. You try to find the time, get your butt in the chair, and just kind of like work through the pain, and you can get to the end of it.
First off, I think that's really good advice for any sort of revision. You can get to the end of it, and your mentor is going to be the person who believes in you. And also, is that not the best cat that has ever catted in any YA mentor video? So I'm gonna cheat a little bit and talk about the emotionally hardest revision I did, because it was during Pitch Wars, back when Jesse mentored me in 2014. He suggested a major overhaul for a very large chunk of the middle that was something that I had rejected doing because I thought it would change the nature of the entire book. And it ended up being wonderful, and it's still in there, and it was the perfect thing to do, and Jesse's brilliant, and everyone should trust Jesse all the time. But I guess my advice and the lesson I learned from it was there's always something that you're going to push back against, and sometimes you should push back against it. Sometimes that's the right answer, and you don't have to take everything that other people tell you to do with your work. And sometimes, even if you cry for 72 hours straight before it happens and just roll around on the floor and scream a lot, that's still the thing you should do. And you should still try to do it at least, because I ended up writing it over, I think, in several different versions to see how the different versions felt to decide what I wanted to do. And we picked the one that worked the best. So you should always try multiple things before you get to your final version, because one of them might be the one that works the best, even if it's the one most soaked in tears in the end of it.
My biggest revision probably was Pitch Wars. I was Pitch Wars 15. Woo! Represent. My mentee had me take a 5 POV book and condense it to 2, and to change the book from the midpoint to the final 2 chapters, have something else happen than what happened, which affected in ripples everything else. And I had to do it in 2 weeks, and that was a lot of work. But it taught me so much. And in my work in progress right now, my agent had me switch it from third person to first person. And this, again, is in 5 POVs because I don't learn my lesson. And so I had to have 5 really unique voices. And that was one of the things I had to do for my revision. And what's amazing is standing in front of this grand abyss of what you're going to do to change it, because this is the story that you love. So first, save your draft and then jump. Like, go for it. Do whatever it is that will make your story better, because it's worth it.
So for me, I think, every revision is painful. My debut, The Disasters, I think I have done a great many revisions on this novel. But I think the 2 that were the toughest were, number 1, when I got my revise and resubmit request from my amazing agent, and I'm so thankful that I actually did that and turned it in, because she's amazing. And then my first revision with my editor. And both of those revisions were contingent on pretty much the same thing. Like, it was that third quarter of the novel from like 50 to 75%. Why could I not get that right? Like, I have wholesale excised that entire thing and replaced it like 2 or 3 times now. And I think it's always the same problem. It's that I was not pulling that thread taut throughout the entire novel. I was not keeping totally focused on the stakes of the novel and making sure that I was going taking the novel where it was going to have the most emotional impact, the most impact on the characters. Boy, it really was tough because, you know, it's always those trickle down effects. You know, you change one thing here and then you end up having to go back and change 6,000 other things throughout the entire novel. And it's tough. And, you know, the answers that people provide for you are not always the ones that are going to work. Like, I think it was Joan that said that earlier. They may say, you know, do X to fix this part. And it's really not that you need to do X, it's that there is a particular problem there and you need to brainstorm your own solution to that. So that's me.
Kit or Kristen, did you guys have a revision story and lesson learned to share?
Computer keeps freezing, so I know not. But hardest revision so far has been Pitch Wars. Quite interestingly, I actually took every single suggestion that my mentors, I had a team of mentors that they both suggested. And at the time, I thought it was just because I was super open to changes, and I had written the book very quickly 6 weeks before Pitch Wars, so I knew how much work it needed. It wasn't like a lot of the other mentees that had extra time to like perfect it and work it and see all the errors. Then when I queried, I remember out of the revise and resubmits for differing agents, and they would give me a lot of detail. And what I noticed was that what they were saying actually just didn't, it didn't my heart, like, yes, and yet I'm someone who's ready to gut my manuscript completely. So I think what had happened was that my mentors had just had the right vision for my book. That we are going to be looking for. I'm not saying that we're going to get anyone to rewrite their entire book. That's not our aim. I'm looking for a mentee vision, ready for huge, crazy work, no matter how big or small that might be. Like, if my mentors had told me to rewrite the book so that we could change the POV, for instance, and it's the vision aligned with mine, I actually would have done it without even hesitating. That's kind of our attitude.
I'm not sure if Kit is frozen or done. Are you done, Kit? Okay, while she's frozen, I'm just gonna jump in and say everything that Kit said. I mean, you don't want to like sabotage the heart of your story, and only you know the heart of your story. And Joanna's a big fan of staying true to the heart of your story. She'll preach that at you forever. But I do think, like, my book that's coming out this fall, The Last Namsara, I rewrote that book from scratch twice. So it has gone through very different manifestations, and every time I did that because I knew it wasn't good enough yet, and so I had no problem doing that. I actually really love revisions. I love rewriting. Nothing is sacred to me, so that's my style. But there was one time right after Pitch Wars and right before I went on sub where my agent was just having this huge problem with one of the characters just at the midpoint of the book, and she's like, I don't believe he would do this. This isn't sitting right with me. And I was like, no, this is what he would do. This is exactly how it needs to be. And I was so resistant, and I dug my heels in, which I'm not usually that resistant, but I was so sure. And then I sat with it and I was like, you know what? I can try it. And this is sort of banking on what Lindsay said. And if I don't love it, I can always go back to the way that it was. And so I did the revision the way that she wanted me to, or just the way that to address the problem that she was finding. And I actually loved it 100% more. And I think the book is stronger for it. And if I hadn't have just tried it, it just wouldn't have been as strong. So there's no harm in trying something, even if you are resistant to it. You can always go back to the way that it was.
Thank you, Kristen. And I'm actually going to chime in with some of my own revision advice as someone who has blown up the same book about 5 times now, and each time for very good reasons. I am going to say to remember that there is always another way to do things, even when you think there isn't, even when you think that this is the only way this can play out, there is always another way that a story can unravel. So that is some advice from me. And now, Sheena, earlier you mentioned that you are mentoring for one of our Team Pit mentees, and I was going to ask you to take just a quick second and tell us about Team Pit. What is it? How did it work? What is happening there?
Awesome. So Team Pit was a contest that we ran kind of parallel to Pitch Wars. A bunch of Pitch Wars mentors were running it, and it was an opportunity for teens who have either have have complete manuscript or incomplete manuscript to enter and be mentored on their pitch and first chapter, and then their writing style was judged by some established writers. And it was really cool that we were able to offer those 5 slots to Teen Pick, because we're all YA writers here, obviously, and that means that we love teens. Like, either we love teens or we were emotionally damaged as teenagers and we haven't grown up. One of those 2 things have happened. And teens are amazing, and I think it's really important that we give them this opportunity to get their voices heard. Teens have always been in Pitch Wars. They've qualified. So if you are a teen watching this right now, please know there is space for you. Teen Pit is a way for us to make sure that there are more spaces at the table for teen writers. And this is not the kiddie slope of Pitch Wars. They are working hand in hand with their mentors, doing full revisions of their books. Angela's edit letter was 8 pages, single-spaced, and we're doing some major things, and I'm right there with her, just like everybody else's mentor will be, and she'll be showcased at the Agent Showcase.
Thank you. All right, so we are coming up on the top of the hour now. So as we have done on all of the past live shows, we're going to close it out by asking each of the mentors to go ahead and give us their best writing advice or their best Pitch Wars advice, whatever you think is the absolute best advice you have got to give to our Pitch Wars hopefuls watching tonight. And because it is Harry Potter's birthday, we are also going to ask you guys which Hogwarts house you are in. So I will go first. My best advice is to read, and read some more. And as you're reading, if you're reading something that you love, ask yourself why. What is it that is pulling you into this book? What is it that you love? What is it that has you turning the pages? And same thing, if you're reading something you don't love, why don't you love it? What is it that is turning you off from that story? So that is my advice, and I am a Hufflepuff. MK, you can go next.
So my piece of writing advice is to find whatever that little spark that made you just love your story and want to write that story and share it. And just hold it really close, like write it on a sticky note, watch lots of, movies and read lots of books that evoke that same feeling in you. Just cling to that spark, because revision is hard, especially like the 15th revision is really hard. And you've got to remember what it was that you loved about your story so much that you needed to share it. I am a Ravenclaw, but a very Slytherin-leaning one, so
Okay, my best piece of writing advice is actually the best writing advice that I ever got, and it was from a writing teacher who is a Hugo and Nebula award-winning sci-fi author, so I think she knows what she's talking about. But she said something to us once that was basically, she had seen mediocre writers persist and succeed, and she'd seen brilliant writers not persist and never get anywhere. So I think it all comes down to persistence. No one's going to do the work for you. and it's your dream, you want it, keep going, do not stop. You can get there. It might take a little longer for some people than others, but persistence is key. And I am a Ravenclaw with a lot of Gryffindor leanings. So it depends what day of the week it is, really.
I'm trying to decide which piece of writing advice I should give. Okay, I think I'm gonna again bank on or go off of what Lindsay just said, and just say, I think I've talked about this in some of our YouTube videos that I've done with Joe, so I'm repeating myself a bit, but basically, if you believe in the book that you wrote, and if you really, really love it, don't let anything stop you. Don't let not getting into pitch wars stop you. Don't let even like hundreds of rejections stop you. Like if you really love the thing that you have written or the thing that you're writing, like don't let anything stop you. That would be my advice.
So my advice would be to lean into the story you're telling and don't be afraid of whatever it is. If you've got a weird story, lean into the weird. Just accept whatever it is and find what it is that you love and make that bigger. And just don't be afraid of your story because it came to you because you can do it.
No, he's still mine. Yeah. I write so much weird stuff, so I guess my advice has to be read, obviously, as Lee said, but also realize that I feel like, especially in the beginning, when you're perhaps like not so used to writing that much, you might find yourself copying other people just because other people know what they're doing and they do it well, and so it's natural that you might want to write characters like that person or plots like that person, but always strive to not only be learning from other people, but also learning about yourself and what you love to write and where your strengths are. And if it's weird, then go for the weird and don't let anyone stop you.
I'm actually going to give the same advice that I gave last year, just because I think that people in pitch wars really need to hear this, which is keep going, and rejection is not the end. Rejection does not mean that you're not talented. The story that it's not really a story, it's just an anecdote or whatever, that I always tell people is I was a mentee twice in pitch wars, but I applied 3 times. I made it in 1 year, and then the next year I didn't make it in, and then the year after that I made it in again. So just because I was rejected that 1 year doesn't mean I was suddenly not talented. It just means that 1 year the manuscript I wrote didn't resonate with the mentors I submitted to, and that's okay. So if you don't make it into pitch wars, it doesn't mean your manuscript is bad. It doesn't mean that you're not talented. It's just chance and luck. You may have been at the top of someone's list, but maybe something personally resonated with them with another manuscript. Not saying that the other manuscript was better, just that maybe the main character dealt with something that mentor had dealt with in their own lives. So just know that rejection doesn't mean you're not talented. It doesn't mean that you're not going to make it. And the last few people haven't done their Harry Potter house, but I'm going to go ahead and do it because I have it written down. I am like 100% Slytherin, which means while you guys have been arguing about who's going to get like requested materials, I've gone through and poisoned all your coffee cups.
I'm Ravenclaw with Hufflepuff leanings.
Oh, and I'm Ravenclaw too. I totally forgot.
I'm Ravenclaw too, Joan.
And with Hufflepuff leanings. So
And we're twins
too.
Oh yeah.
Joan, we need to be best friends, Joan.
Yeah.
It's fine, Kirby. I'm just going to report you to the prefect, and then we'll see how that turns out. I'm going to give sort of the same advice, although with a slightly different leaning, which I think is just good life advice in a sense. But we talk a lot about always pushing on and always working towards something and always writing or writing every day and always trying. But I think at the same time, especially in pitch wars, where it's the first experience for a lot of people doing large revisions or getting rejected, to learn or know your limits. on when you need to push and when you need to take a break and when you need to take a step back and when you need to value your mental and physical health over what you're writing at that moment. Because you can't write a book if you just don't have the mental mind space for it at the time, because you've been trying to write that book every day, every hour, every minute for the past 6 months. So just try and learn and know your limits, and there's nothing wrong with it. Everyone's going to have different limits, and everyone's going to have different times when they need to push forward or take a break. And always do the best that is the best for you, which I just stole from the Great British Bake Off. No regrets. So, and I am 100% in Gryffindor, which is fine because I have a picture of Minerva McGonagall on my wall above my desk. So.
My writing advice echoes what everyone else has said. I would say read hugely outside your genre. Read nonfiction, read all the things that actually aren't in your genre. Don't be pinned down by genre you write. It'll make your writing richer. I'd also write and crazy, audacious book idea. I've heard a lot of people say that they have a brilliant idea, but they write it yet and they don't know if they could do it justice. But you only get one debut, and what if the high concept pitch or the big idea that you had can be the thing that can get you that open the door for you to have a debut in a market that is super crowded. And echoing what Lindsay said earlier, but one of the mentors had said in another live chat, be Kanye. The writing industry is going to reject you over and over and over again. Just be Kanye and ridiculously in yourself. As for Pitch Wars writing advice, enter. If you're not sure, enter. If you think you're not ready, enter. Don't be nervous or intimidated, and send to whichever mentors are on your heart that you really want to work with. Up to my mentors last year, that's why I'm saying that, and I'm so happy that I did. And be ready to work super duper hard. I will see all of you guys on the field of battle, Nemesis, okay?
We're gonna fight. I can feel it.
All right. My writing advice is kind of something I already said. Don't be afraid. And also keep finding new, weird, interesting things in the world. Keep experiencing things. Keep living. Like, that is where you get a lot of your inspiration. And that is just where you kind of discover who you are as a writer and what you want to write about. And then the kind of first writing advice I got when I was a young writer that stuck with me was from Allie Carter. She said, butt in chair, fingers on keyboard. That's kind of like the only way to get the work done. There's no, like, you don't think about it forever. You don't wait for that moment of inspiration. You just have to sit and do the work. And I'm a Slytherin.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, thank you all so much for joining us tonight and bringing us your questions. I know we didn't get to all of them, but there will be mentors on the feed this evening and tomorrow and the next day and forever probably to try and answer some of those questions that are out there. Thank you to all of our amazing YA mentors tonight for their time and for their brilliance. It was so fun hanging out with you guys. I had a great time. Thank you, Melissa West, who's our Twitter captain, for giving us the questions on the air. Be sure to tune in tomorrow night. Tomorrow is our last Pitch Wars Live of the year before the sub window opens. There will be an assortment of mentors from all different age categories. Nikki will be back as your host, and I will be your Twitter captain for the evening. And I have heard a rumor that Brenda herself may be on tomorrow's show. And for those of you who have been around in the past, you know that when Brenda shows up, there's usually a surprise somewhere. So you don't want to miss that. Have a great night, everyone. And as Nikki usually says, may the pitch be with you. All right, good night.
Thank you, Lee.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Lee. Bye.
Bye.